The courtroom crackled with whispers, like static before a storm, the air heavy with the weight of judgment already passed. A 16-year-old black girl shuffled in, her sneakers scuffing the cracked tiles, hands cuffed like she was already sentenced. The judge barely glanced up, the prosecutor smirked through her notes, and a school officer grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to make her wince. The gallery dismissed her as just another name to check off, their laughter sharp in the quiet. But then she pulled a small flash drive from her pocket, its edges worn from nights of clutching it tight, and spoke words that froze the room. What happens when the girl they laughed at holds the truth they tried to erase? Hit that like button, share this story, and let's step into a tale where silence becomes louder than power itself. The juvenile courtroom in Atlanta smelled of dusty files and burnt coffee, left too long in a chipped pot. It was a humid Wednesday morning in October 2025, the kind of heat that made your shirt cling before 10 a.m. The room was small, its paint peeling in corners. The clock above the judge's bench stuck at 4:12, its hands rusted still. Lila Hayes, 16, stood at the defendant's table, her hoodie faded but clean, her braids neat despite the cuffs pinching her wrists. Her public defender, Sam Carter, a young lawyer with a nervous tick, shuffled a thin file, his pen tapping like he was counting down to defeat. Lila's hands rested on a flash drive, her fingers tracing its scratched surface, a lifeline she'd carried for weeks. Lila was charged with interfering with school security at Roosevelt High. She'd filmed a school resource officer, Derek Grant, berating and shoving a freshman, Malik, during a dispute over a hallway pass. Lila didn't shout or fight. She pulled out her phone, hit record, and let the truth breathe. The video spread online, thousands of views in hours, until the school demanded her arrest, calling it a disruption. The gallery saw a girl in over her head, but Lila saw a promise she'd made to her mother: never let injustice hide in plain sight. Years ago, when Lila was 11, her mother, Nora Hayes, a CIA field analyst, had sat her down in their Atlanta apartment, a legal pad between them. "You see everything, Lila," Nora said, her voice steady but warm, her hands calloused from years of work. "But seeing isn't enough. You have to know how to use it." Nora taught her to notice details, to question rules, to read laws like maps. Lila absorbed every lesson, staying up late to study Nora's old case files, learning the First Amendment like it was her shield. Nora was often away, her job a shadow, but her lessons stayed with Lila, etched deep like the lines in her mother's hands. The incident at Roosevelt High had unfolded in a crowded hallway, the air thick with the chatter of students rushing to class. Derek Grant, a broad-shouldered officer with a badge that gleamed too brightly, had pinned Malik against a locker, his voice sharp. "You don't belong here without a pass." Malik, barely 14, froze, his backpack slipping. Students whispered, some pulling out phones, others stepping back. Ms. Lisa Brooks, a history teacher, watched from her classroom door, her face tight but silent. Lila stepped forward, her phone steady, capturing every word. "Let him go," she said calmly, her lens fixed. Grant turned, his eyes narrowing, and grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Drop that phone, kid," he growled. Lila didn't flinch, her finger still on record, her mother's voice in her head. "Truth is your armor." The night before her hearing, Lila sat in her bedroom, the glow of her laptop casting shadows across walls covered in sticky notes. She'd spent weeks filing public records requests, digging through school board emails, cross-referencing her mother's notes on legal precedent. An email from Ms. Brooks confirmed Grant's history. 6 complaints, all dismissed. Lila burned the video onto a flash drive, its weight heavy in her hand. Her aunt, Denise, stopped by, her voice soft with worry. "You sure about this, Lila?" Lila nodded, clutching the drive. "Mom said the truth only works if you carry it. I'm carrying it." Denise hugged her, quick but tight, her eyes wet. Lila didn't sleep, but her hands were steady. Judge Ellen Pierce, a white woman in her late 50s, sat high on the bench, her glasses low, her gray hair pulled tight. Her voice cut through the room like a knife through routine. "Miss Hayes," she said, barely looking up from her docket. "Where's your counsel?" Lila's voice was soft but steady, like a stream over stone. "I'm working with Mr. Carter, Your Honor, but I'll present my own evidence." A snort came from the back, where 2 school officials sat, their ties too tight, their faces smug. One whispered, "She's done," and the other laughed, the sound sharp. The prosecutor, Claire Morton, stood, her heels clicking on the tile, her blonde hair catching the dim light. "Your Honor, the defendant filmed and shared a video that incited unrest at Roosevelt High, disrupting classes and defying authority. We request a swift ruling to restore order." Pierce's pen scratched the docket, her eyes flicking to Lila. Do you contest these charges, Ms. Hayes? Lila's fingers tightened on the flash drive, her knuckles pale. Yes, ma'am. The school's actions violate my First Amendment rights, and I have proof. The whisper stopped, the air growing thick. Morton rolled her eyes, adjusting her blazer. Your Honor, she's a teenager with a smartphone, not a lawyer. The video's irrelevant. Pierce's voice was dry, like chalk dust. This is a courtroom, Ms. Hayes, not a film studio. You're here to answer, not direct. Lila didn't flinch. I'm not directing, Your Honor. I'm defending. She held up the flash drive, its surface glinting under the fluorescent lights. This shows Officer Grant intimidating a student and grabbing me without cause. This email shows the school ignored complaints about him for 3 years. The room stilled, a held breath. A reporter in the fourth row, Sarah Kim, paused her typing, her eyes narrowing. Grant, standing near the witness table, shifted, his jaw tight, his uniform crisp, but his hands clenched. Pierce leaned forward, her glasses slipping. You're accusing an officer of misconduct? Her tone was sharp but curious. Lila nodded, her voice steady. Yes, ma'am. And Tinker v. Des Moines, 1969, protects my right to record in a public space. Students don't lose their rights at the schoolhouse gate. Morton scoffed, her voice cutting through. This is a stunt, Your Honor. She's quoting cases she doesn't understand. Pierce didn't look at her. She stared at Lila, her glasses catching the light. Where did you learn this, young lady? Lila's jaw tightened, a flicker of pain crossing her face. My mother, Your Honor. Nora Hayes. She's a CIA analyst. She taught me to see the truth. The name landed like a stone in still water. Nora Hayes wasn't a household name, but those who knew her reputation, a sharp, relentless analyst who uncovered what others missed, felt the weight ripple through the room. Sarah Kim's pen flew across her notebook, her hands trembling. Pierce's face softened for a moment, her pen still. I see, she said, her voice quieter. But this court deals in evidence, not stories. Lila's eyes didn't waver. Then watch this. She handed the flash drive to Carter, who passed it to the clerk with shaking hands. It's time-stamped, verified by a public records request I filed myself. Word of Lila's arrest had spread through Roosevelt High like wildfire. In the cafeteria, students huddled over their phones, the video racking up views on X, where Lila Speaks, trending locally. A senior, Tasha Green, started a petition, her voice shaking as she spoke at a school assembly. Lila's fighting for us, she said, her words met with cheers and nervous glances from teachers. Parents gathered in a community center, their voices low but angry. My son got a warning from Grant last year, one mother said, her hands twisting a tissue. Same officer, no action. The school board sent a generic email about policy enforcement, but the chatter grew louder, a spark ready to ignite. Morton stood, her face flushed. This is inadmissible, without proper chain of custody. Pierce took the drive, her fingers hesitating as if it might burn her. You filed this request yourself? Lila nodded, her voice firm. Yes, ma'am. Took me 5 weeks, 4 denials, and my mom's advice from her old notes. The room went silent, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something to break. Pierce handed the drive to the clerk, who plugged it into a monitor. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy hallway at Roosevelt High. Malik, the freshman, stood frozen against a locker, his face scared but defiant. Grant loomed over him, his voice sharp, his hand shoving Malik's shoulder. Lila appeared, phone raised, stepping forward. Grant turned, grabbed her arm, his grip tight, her braids swinging as she held steady. The clip ended, and the room exhaled, murmurs spreading. Morton jumped up, her voice sharp. This proves nothing. It's unverified and irrelevant. Pierce didn't respond immediately. She stared at the blank screen, then at Lila, her lips pursed. This suggests a pattern, she said, almost to herself. Grant shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the school officials, who looked down at their hands. Carter, finding his courage, spoke up. Your Honor, we request the charges be dismissed based on this evidence and the violation of Ms. Hayes' rights. Pierce's pen tapped once, then stopped. Not yet, she said, her voice low. But I'm listening. The tension was palpable, like the air before a thunderstorm. Grant took a step toward the witness table, his boots heavy on the tile, and began his testimony. His voice was smooth, practiced. The defendant interfered with a routine security check, he said, his eyes avoiding Lila's. She was confrontational, disruptive, and her video caused unrest. The gallery nodded along, some too quick to agree. Sarah Kim frowned, her fingers pausing over her laptop. Lila sat still, her face unreadable, but her fingers traced the edge of her mother's old legal pad, tucked inside her hoodie pocket. Morton nodded at Grant's words, her smile tight. "Thank you, officer. The school's authority must be upheld." But before she could sit, Lila raised a hand, her voice cutting through. "Your Honor, may I ask a question?" Pierce's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. "One question, Ms. Hayes." Lila looked at Grant, her eyes steady. "If I was so disruptive, why does your incident report say the hallway was clear except for Malik and me?" Grant froze, his mouth twitching. The gallery murmured, heads turning. Morton stood, her voice sharp. "Objection, she's badgering." Pierce waved her off. "Answer the question, officer." Grant cleared his throat, his confidence cracking. The report might have missed some details. Lila didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just nodded, like she'd expected the dodge. Pierce's eyes narrowed, her pen still. "Ms. Hayes," she said, "you seem to know more than you're letting on." Lila's voice was quiet, but firm. "My mother taught me to read between the lines, ma'am, especially when the lines are written to hide something." That's when it happened. From the back row, a woman stood, slowly, her dark blazer blending with the gallery's shadows. Her heels clicked softly on the tile as she stepped into the aisle, her face calm but sharp, like someone who'd been waiting all morning for this moment. Nobody noticed her at first, not even Pierce, whose eyes were locked on Lila. She stopped at the bar, her voice steady, carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Your Honor, my name is Nora Hayes, CIA field analyst and Lila's mother. I'd like to submit a statement as a witness." The gallery turned, head swiveling like a wave. Morton's face twisted, her pen dropping to the table. "This is out of order," she snapped, but Pierce silenced her with a raised hand. "Ms. Hayes, you weren't listed as a witness." Nora nodded, her dark eyes steady behind sleek glasses. "I wasn't, ma'am, but I've tracked patterns of misconduct in institutions for 15 years. I trained Lila to do the same. We have records on Officer Grant, ignored complaints since 2022, verified by state education logs." She held up a folder, its edges crisp, filled with typed reports. "They're public, cross-checked by my agency." The room buzzed, a hum of shock and curiosity. Sarah Kim typed furiously, her laptop screen glowing. Pierce took the folder, her fingers lingering on the pages. "You're with the CIA?" Nora nodded, her voice soft but unyielding. "Yes, ma'am. And my daughter learned to see what others miss." Lila's eyes flickered, a flash of pride crossing her face, but she stayed still, her hands steady on the table. Pierce skimmed the folder, her lips tightening. "This lists multiple complaints against Grant, unaddressed, dating back to 2022. Morton's voice rose, desperate. "This is irrelevant to the case." Pierce didn't look at her. She stared at Nora, then Lila. "Ms. Hayes," she said, "did you know about this?" Lila's voice was quiet, almost reverent. "I found Mom's notes after the incident, ma'am. She was working on school safety cases before I started filming. I finished what she taught me." The room went silent, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Sarah Kim's pen stopped, her eyes wide. Ms. Lisa Brooks, the teacher, shifted uncomfortably in the gallery. She'd seen Grant's behavior for years, stayed quiet to keep her job. Now she felt the weight of her silence, her hands twisting in her lap. Pierce leaned back, her chair creaking, her eyes searching Lila's face. "You planned this?" Lila shook her head. "I didn't plan it, Your Honor. I prepared for it. Mom said silence isn't surrender, it's strategy." The room froze. Grant's face paled, his hands clenching under the table. The school officials looked down, their smugness gone. Morton's mouth twitched, her argument crumbling. Pierce's gavel hovered, but she didn't strike it. "Careful, Ms. Hayes," she said, her voice softer now, almost respectful. "But I'm still listening." Nora stepped back, her role done, but her presence lingered like a shadow. She'd spent years analyzing patterns, facing threats in her work, But seeing Lila's name on the docket had pulled her back from an overseas assignment overnight, a debt to her daughter's courage. The gallery was restless now, whispers growing louder. A student in the back, barely 15, pulled out her phone, quietly sharing the video again. Another spectator, an older woman with a worn scarf, nodded to herself, remembering Nora's reputation from a community meeting years ago. Pierce cleared her throat, breaking the silence. "This court will take a recess," she said, her voice quieter than before, like she was wrestling with something. "We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. The gavel struck, its sound sharp against the oak bench, and the room exhaled, voices rising in a chaotic hum. In the hallway, the buzz grew louder. Students from Roosevelt High clustered together, their phones glowing with clips of Lila's speech. Lila Speaks trending nationwide now. Sarah Kim drafted her article, her fingers flying. Teens video and CIA mother expose school's hidden truths. During the recess, Lila stood by a courthouse window, the Atlanta skyline hazy through the glass. Ms. Brooks approached, her voice low. "I should have spoken up," she said, her eyes downcast. "I'm telling the board tomorrow." Lila nodded, not angry, just tired. "Good. It's a start." Across the hall, a school board member, Mr. Alan Reed, watched Lila, his face pale. He'd ignored complaints about Grant, thinking they'd fade. Now he typed a frantic email to his supervisor, his hands shaking. In her chambers, Pierce sat alone, Nora's folder and Lila's flash drive on her desk. She'd presided over thousands of cases, but this one felt different. Lila wasn't loud, wasn't defiant, just relentless, like her mother. She remembered a case years ago, a misconduct complaint she'd dismissed too quickly. Now she wondered what she'd missed. She opened the folder, her eyes scanning the complaints. Dates, names, incidents, all ignored. Her fingers lingered on Nora's verification stamp, its precision a quiet demand for justice. When court reconvened, the air was electric, charged with anticipation. Pierce took the bench, her face unreadable, her glasses low. "Ms. Hayes," she said, her voice steady but softer, "your evidence and Ms. Hayes' statement suggest a pattern of misconduct at Roosevelt High. This court can't rewrite school policy, but it can demand accountability." She paused, her eyes meeting Lila's, a flicker of respect passing between them. "The charges are dismissed. I'm recommending a state investigation into the school's practices and Officer Grant's conduct." The gallery erupted, claps, gasps, cheers echoing off the peeling walls. Pierce's gavel cracked, but it couldn't drown the sound. Morton sat, her hands clenched, her notes untouched. Grant stood, his face pale, his boots heavy as he walked out, avoiding every eye. Lila stood still, her flash drive back in her pocket, her face calm, but her chest rising faster now. This wasn't a victory, it was a beginning. The next day, Roosevelt High buzzed with a new energy. Students gathered in the cafeteria, their voices low but hopeful, passing around phones with Lila's video. A group of freshmen taped a poster to the bulletin board. "We see the truth." Ms. Brooks stood before her class, her voice steady for the first time in years. "We're studying rights today," she said, holding up a copy of the First Amendment. A junior in the back, Tasha Green, raised her hand. "Like Lila did?" Brooks nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Exactly like Lila." Outside, a news van parked near the school, filming students chanting her name. By evening, Sarah's article hit the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Teen silence and CIA mother shatter school secrets. It went viral, 900,000 shares by midnight. Lila Speaks trending globally. Roosevelt High students posted the video, their captions echoing Lila's words. Silence is strategy. The school board announced a public hearing, inviting Lila to speak. She didn't respond, not yet, her focus still on the promise she'd kept. Outside the courthouse, Lila's aunt, Denise, waited in her old sedan, its engine idling under a flickering streetlight. She hadn't seen Lila since Nora's last assignment, too busy working double shifts to stay close. Now, she hugged her, her voice rough with emotion. "You're just like your mom, kid." Lila's throat tightened, but she managed a nod. "She didn't teach me to quit." The next morning, Lila walked past Roosevelt High, her backpack heavy with her mother's legal pad. A mural was being painted on the school's fence, a silhouette of a girl with a phone, the words, "Truth waits for no one," in bold red. She didn't stop, didn't stare, just kept walking. The flash drive in her pocket a quiet reminder of her mother's voice. Truth only works if you carry it. Lila was still carrying it. This isn't just about a girl or a courtroom. It's about what happens when silence becomes a weapon, when truth refuses to be buried. Have you ever seen someone underestimated change everything? Drop it in the comments, share this story if it moved you, and let's keep this conversation alive. Subscribe for more tales of courage, truth, and the voices that shift the world. See you in the next one.